I had a bad feeling about my son and his wife, so I told them I had a cardiology appointment across town. Before I left that morning, I hid a small wireless camera inside the old mantel clock my father built with his own hands back in 1972. Then I drove down to the Waffle House on Peachtree Industrial and sat in my truck in the far corner of the parking lot where nobody could see me. At 12:48, my neighbor Curtis came jogging across the lot, breathing hard, knocking twice on my passenger window. He leaned in close and said, "Check your phone at 1 o'clock. Then he looked me dead in the eye. That's when they show up. That's when you're finally going to understand what's been happening inside your own house. When the clock hit 1 o'clock, I opened the camera app on my phone, and what I saw on that screen made my heart stop cold. 68 years old. 31 years running a chain of construction supply yards across Georgia teaches you things that no business school ever could. You learn to read people. You learn to spot a lie from the other side of a warehouse floor. You learn when something is being hidden from you. And you learn that the people most capable of hiding things are sometimes the ones who sleep in your house and eat at your table. That Tuesday morning, when I walked into my home office, something was wrong before I could even name it. My desktop computer was still on. The screen showed the login page, but I always shut that machine completely down at night. I have done that for 30 years. My father raised me in a 2-bedroom house in Vine City, and the power bill was not a joke. You cut things off when you are done with them. That is not a habit. That is a religion. I sat down slowly in my chair. The leather groaned under me, same as it always did. I looked around the room. My filing cabinet was closed, but the key was turned the wrong way. I always leave it pointing straight up. That was Gloria's idea, actually. She set that system up for me back in 1998, when I almost lost a contract because I couldn't find the right papers fast enough. She said, "Jimmy, a man who can't find his documents can't run a business." She was right, same as she was about most things. Now that key was pointed toward the window. Someone had gone in and locked it back up without knowing the system she'd built. I pulled open the top drawer. The folders were there, but the order had been disturbed. My property deeds, which I kept sorted alphabetically by county, had been shuffled. The Cobb County Yard deed was behind the Savannah warehouse papers. The Atlanta house documents were shoved to the bottom, underneath a stack of old insurance forms. Someone had been going through my records. Gloria would have spotted this the moment she walked in. She had an eye for the kind of detail that made her not just a good wife, but a good partner, in every real sense of that word. She ran the household accounts, kept the vendor relationships organized, and remembered every contract term I ever signed better than my own lawyer did. Cancer took her 5 years ago, and not a day passes that I don't feel the specific weight of her absence. I sat in the chair she bought me for my 62nd birthday and felt her missing like a cold wind blowing through a room with no windows. I opened my desk drawer. The wooden box where I keep my will and my insurance policies was sitting the wrong direction. I always keep the hinges toward me. Gloria's rule again. You should be able to open what's yours without turning it around first. Now the hinges faced away. I lifted the lid. The papers had been unfolded and refolded. The creases were different, sharper in some places, softer in others. Someone had read my will. My chest tightened like a vice. Only 2 other people had keys to this house. My son, Darius, who was 44 and worked as an accountant at a firm over in Midtown, and my daughter-in-law, Vanessa, who was 41 and managed their household and their 2 children in Buckhe. A.D. Darius was my only child. The boy I took to Lake Lanier every summer for 10 years straight. The boy I coached through youth league football until his sophomore year. The boy who stood beside his mother's hospital bed, holding her hand until she took her last breath, and then turned and buried his face in my chest and cried like he was 8 years old again, did not want to believe it was him, but the evidence was sitting right in front of me. I thought back to dinner too. Saturdays before, at their house in Buckhead. The dining room smelled like candles Vanessa had lit, nice candles. The kind that come in heavy glass containers from boutiques and Phipps. Plaza. Darius poured me another glass of Merlot and smiled at me the way he does when he's about to say something he's already rehearsed. Dad, he said, have you given any real thought to what happens to the business when you retire? I looked up from my plate. What do you mean by that? Well, he set the bottle down carefully. You're pushing 70. The industry is changing. Big box stores, online ordering, supply chain consolidation. Maybe it's time to start thinking about selling. Vanessa nodded from across the table. She had on new earrings, gold drops, heavy-looking, the kind that don't come cheap. I noticed them because I'd never seen them before. He's right, James, she said. Her voice was warm, practiced. You have given your whole life to that business. You deserve to rest. Go somewhere. Travel. Let somebody else carry the weight for a while. Now, I want to be honest here, because this is important. Vanessa was smart. Genuinely, frighteningly smart. She knew how to frame things so that what she wanted sounded exactly like what you needed. Gloria had warned me about that kind of intelligence years ago. Not about Vanessa specifically, but about people who deploy warmth as a strategy. Baby, the most dangerous thing in any room isn't the person yelling, Gloria told me once. It's the person smiling while they calculate. I should have listened harder. I like my work, I said. It keeps me sharp. But at your age, Darius continued, and something in his voice shifted just slightly, things can happen fast. Heart problems. Memory issues. If something were to happen and you couldn't make decisions, it would be a lot easier on everybody if we had arrangements already in place. Easier on everybody. I changed the subject to the Falcons game. But his words stayed with me. They circled in my head the entire drive home, the entire next morning, every quiet moment for a week. Now sitting in my office with my disturbed files in front of me. The pieces were connecting. The questions about the estate, the comments about my age, the shuffled documents, the wrong-turned key. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the Georgia sun was pressing hard against the magnolia trees in the backyard. I had built this house 29 years ago when Watkins Supply was just 1 yard and 6 employees in East Point. Now I had 5 locations across Georgia, 43 workers, and properties the assessor valued at several $1 million combined. I was not ready to hand any of that over, and I was absolutely not ready to be pushed out by my own blood. I picked up my phone and called. Curtis, my neighbor of 22 years. Retired Atlanta Fire Department battalion chief, 70 years old, and sharp as a box cutter. He picked up on the first ring. Curtis, I said, I need to ask you something. Have you noticed anybody coming to my house when I'm not at the yard? There was silence on the line. Then, come next door. We need to talk face to face. I walked through the backyard and knocked. Curtis opened the door and led me to his kitchen. His wife, Patricia, was visiting their daughter in Charlotte. He poured 2 cups of black coffee and sat down across from me at his table. I didn't want to say anything, he started slowly, because I wasn't sure what I was looking at. But your son and his wife, they've been coming by a lot. 2, 3 times a week when you're at work. Sometimes they bring another man with them. Tall brother, expensive overcoat, carries a leather briefcase. My stomach dropped. How often? 6, maybe 7 times in the past month. They stay an hour or 2. The tall man always leaves first. Drives a black BMW, one of those parking placards on the mirror. Looks like a lawyer pass. Curtis slid a folded piece of paper across the table. Wrote down the plate number. Old fire department habit. Details matter. I put the paper in my pocket. Curtis, thank you. James. He looked at me steady. Whatever is going on in there, be careful. Family can cut you deeper than any enemy. I've seen it too many times. I drove to my main yard on the south side. My operations manager, Deshawn, looked up when I walked in and immediately knew something was wrong. You all right, boss? You look like you've seen something you can't unsee. I'm fine, I said. Just tired. I was not fine. I was about as far from fine as a man can get. That afternoon, I went to an electronics store out on Cobb Parkway and bought a wireless camera the size of a matchbox. The young man behind the counter walked me through everything. How to connect it to my phone, how to set it to record on motion detection, how to store the footage in the cloud where I could pull it up from anywhere. I drove home and hid the camera inside my father's mantel clock. The old clock hadn't run in years, but I kept it because my father built it himself in his workshop in Macon when he was about my age. Gloria always said the clock was the most important thing in our house, not because it worked, but because it proved something. Your father made something with nothing but his hands and his patience, she told me. That's what this whole family is built on. The camera lens fit perfectly behind the decorative face. From that angle, it covered my entire office. Then I made a phone call. Darius. It's Dad. Hey, Dad. Everything okay? Yeah. I just wanted to let you know. I've got a heart appointment tomorrow. Doctor wants to run some tests, stress test, echocardiogram, that kind of thing. I'll be at Piedmont Hospital most of the day. Oh, no. Is everything all right? Just routine. At my age, they want to check everything twice. Probably won't be done until late afternoon. You want me to come with you? No, I'll be fine. You've got work. I'll call you when I'm done. Okay, Dad. Take care of yourself. I hung up and let out a long breath. The trap was set. The next morning, I left the house at 8:15. I drove toward Piedmont, parked in the deck, sat in my truck for 20 minutes. Then I looped back around and parked 2 blocks from my house, behind a landscaping company's truck where I had a clear sight line to my driveway. I waited dot at 12:22. A silver Cadillac Escalade pulled in. Darius got out of the driver's side. Vanessa stepped out from the passenger seat, composed, purposeful, like a woman who had planned exactly where she was going to stand when she walked through that door. From the back came the tall man in the expensive overcoat, leather briefcase in hand. Vanessa used her key. They went inside. I opened the camera app on my phone. The picture was perfectly clear. They were in my office. Darius went straight to the filing cabinet and pulled out the property deeds. He spread them across my desk. Vanessa and the tall man stood behind him, both of them studying the documents. But I noticed something. Vanessa wasn't just watching. She was directing. She pointed to specific papers. She spoke first. She set the pace. Everything's here, Darius said, reading off the documents. The house, the cabin in Blue Ridge, the Savannah condo, all 5 supply yard properties, and his shares in the company. The tall man opened his briefcase and removed a thick stack of papers. I've prepared the transfer documents, he said. Once we have him declared incompetent, all of this transfers into your name. We just need a judge's signature. And you're confident this will hold? Vanessa asked. Her voice was calm, precise. The tall man smiled. I've done this before. Once we obtain Dr. Caldwell's assessment, the guardianship hearing is a formality. Judges don't typically challenge medical experts. Vanessa picked up the deed to my Blue Ridge cabin and looked at it the way you look at something that's already yours. This property alone is worth $2 million easy. Darius leaned over the desk. The house is another 3. If we liquidate all the properties, sell the inventory and equipment, we're looking at 14, maybe 17 million total. My hands started shaking. What about the care facility? Vanessa asked. She was the one asking the hard questions. She was the one who had thought through every step. The tall man nodded. I've already spoken with Magnolia Gardens. They have a private room available. Once the guardianship order is approved, we can move him in within the week. After a few months, everything settles. Nobody questions anything. Darius made a sound that I had never heard from him before. A short laugh, cold and hollow. The old man will probably thank us eventually. He's been working himself into the ground for 40 years. Maybe he can finally get some rest. I felt like someone had reached through that phone screen and squeezed all the air out of my chest, not my own son. Planning to have me declared mentally unfit. Planning to strip me of everything I had built across 3 decades. Planning to put me in a facility and divide up my life like it was an estate sale. Dr. Caldwell's assessment goes to the court on Monday, the tall man said. He has reviewed Mr. Watkins' medical records and is prepared to testify to early-stage dementia. Vanessa frowned slightly. But he's never actually examined James. That's what the medical records are for. The tall man's smile didn't waver. Age, stress, the death of his wife. It all builds a narrative. The judge sees an elderly man who needs protection from himself. There it was. They were going to use Gloria's death against me. They were going to take the hardest thing that ever happened to me and turn it into evidence that I was broken. Gloria deserved better than that. She had spent 33 years being the most competent, clear-eyed person in every room she entered. She would have seen through Vanessa's plan long before it ever got this far. I know that now with a certainty that sits in my bones. I watched them for another 25 minutes. They talked about which pieces of furniture they wanted from my house. They talked about me like I was already gone, like I was already a file to be processed, a check to be deposited. When they finally left, I sat in my truck on that side street for a long time that my hands were shaking. Not from the cold, from a rage so deep it had no bottom. That night I sat in my living room in the dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't eat. I just sat in my chair and stared at the wall and let the questions burn through me. Where did I lose my son? Was it when Gloria died and I buried myself in the yards trying to outrun the grief, leaving Darius to figure out his pain alone? Was it when I gave him everything he asked for and forgot to make him earn anything? Was it all those years when Vanessa was quietly feeding him a story about how I owed him more than I was giving, how my success was somehow being held back from him, how taking was just a matter of finally collecting what was rightfully his? The truth is, Gloria never fully trusted Vanessa. She never said it in plain words. That wasn't Gloria's way. But she would find small reasons to change the subject when Vanessa entered a room. She paid attention in a way she didn't have to announce. That girl is managing something, Gloria said to me once, soft and careful. I just haven't figured out yet what it is. I didn't listen closely enough. That failure was mine. The next morning I called Marcus Webb, my attorney for the past 20 years. He had handled every major transaction, every property deal, every legal matter Watkins Supply had ever navigated. His office was on Peachtree Center Avenue, 17th floor. Marcus, I said when he picked up, I need to see you today. It's urgent. Come in at 10, he said without hesitation. I'll clear the morning. I arrived exactly on time. Marcus was waiting with a legal pad and a look on his face that said he already knew something serious was coming. Tell me everything, he said. I showed him the video. He watched it twice. The second time, his jaw tightened. James, this is elder abuse. Conspiracy to commit fraud. And if they are working with a physician to fabricate a dementia diagnosis, that is a criminal offense. These people are looking at serious prison time. What do we do? First, and we are doing this today, we protect everything you own. We're putting your assets into a trust. The house, the cabin, the condo, the business, all 5 yards. You retain full control over everything, but legally, the assets belong to the trust. That means even if a court were to grant Darius guardianship over you personally, he cannot touch the trust property. You can do all of that today? By the end of business, I will call in every favor I have. He paused. Now, what happens to Darius and Vanessa? That depends entirely on what you want. I looked at him. If you want to go to the police today, we have enough on this video to arrest them. The doctor, the lawyer, your son, his wife, all of them. Arrest my son? What he is doing, James, is a crime. He is not acting like your son right now. He is acting like someone who wants to rob you. Marcus leaned forward. There's another option. We wait. We let them file their papers. We let them walk into court with a falsified medical report. And then we take them apart in front of a judge with evidence they cannot explain away. Why wait? Because right now, a defense attorney could argue they were just talking, just planning. People plan things they never do. But the moment they file those documents, the moment they stand up in a courtroom and present a fraudulent diagnosis, there is no defense available. The charges stick. The sentences are real. I sat back. How long do we wait? Based on what they said in that video, they're moving fast. The doctor's report goes to the court Monday. The hearing will likely be Wednesday or Thursday. 1 week, maybe less. And until then, you act normal. You do not confront them. You do not raise any suspicion. You let them believe their plan is on track. I nodded slowly. I could do that. I had spent my whole career sitting across tables from people who were trying to get the better of me. I knew how to hold a face. One more thing, Marcus said. You should not be alone. If they are this desperate, there may be other risks. Stay somewhere else. Don't be alone with them. That night I packed a bag and drove to Curtis's house. I sat at his kitchen table and told him everything from start to finish. He listened the way he always did, without interrupting, without reacting, just absorbing. You can stay here as long as you need, he said when I finished. Then, James, I'm proud of you. Most men would have kicked that door in by now. You're thinking this through. I didn't feel like I was thinking clearly. I felt like something vital had been removed from inside me. Over the next 6 days, I kept the camera running. Darius and Vanessa returned to my house twice more. Both times with the tall man. Both times reviewing documents, confirming dates, making plans. I noticed in both visits that it was Vanessa who kept the timeline organized. She was the one who remembered which property was worth what. She was the one who knew the name of the judge assigned to the guardianship court. She was the one who had already researched Magnolia Gardens, already visited the facility, already selected the room. Darius followed her lead. I don't say that to make excuses for my son. A man is responsible for his own choices. Gloria believed that absolutely, and so do I, but I say it because it matters when you're trying to understand how something like this happens to a family. Vanessa had been building this plan for a long time. Years, probably. And she had done it quietly, patiently, the way you build anything that's meant to last. On Tuesday evening, Darius called me. Dad, there's something I need to talk to you about. Can we have dinner tomorrow night? My heart rate did not change. I was that calm. Or maybe I was that numb. Sure, I said. Where? That steakhouse downtown. The one Mom always liked. 6 o'clock. After I hung up, I called Marcus. He wants to meet tomorrow night. Go, Marcus said. Listen, don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. And record the entire conversation. I arrived at the restaurant at 5:50. Darius was already there, sitting at a corner table in the back. He stood up when he saw me and smiled, that familiar smile from when he was a boy. But now I could see the machinery behind it. I had seen him practice that smile on video, using it in my office while planning to take my house. I sat down across from him. Thanks for coming. Dad, of course. He reached across the table and touched my arm. Sandra and I have been worried about you. You seem tired lately. A little forgetful. We've been talking, and we think it might be time for you to slow down. I kept my face still. Slow down how? Sell the business. Move somewhere peaceful. There are some beautiful senior communities out near Marietta. Mountain views, activities, people your own age. You'd have everything you needed without all this pressure. I looked at him. I looked at the stranger wearing my son's face. And the house? The house is too much for one person, Dad. Too much maintenance, too many memories. It makes more sense to sell it and use that money for your care. Your care. Darius, I said quietly, are you doing this for me? Or for you? Something flickered behind his eyes. A crack in the rehearsed performance. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. We looked at each other across that. White tablecloth and the restaurant noise fell completely. Away, Dad. His voice dropped lower now, harder. You're not well. You're confused. That's exactly why we need to move now, before things deteriorate further. What things, Darius? Signing everything over to you? Moving me to Magnolia Gardens? Using a doctor who's never once examined me to have me declared incompetent? His face went the color of ash. Who told you that? Nobody told me. I have a camera in my office. The silence that followed was the longest of my life. Then his expression changed. The concerned sun mask cracked and dropped away, and I saw what was underneath it. Something cold. Something calculated. Something I did not raise. Fine, he said. His voice was flat. You want to do this hard? We can do hard. By tomorrow afternoon, you'll be legally declared incapacitated. Dr. Caldwell has already filed his report. The hearing is at 2 o'clock. There's nothing you can do about it. You would do this to your own father. You have so much, and you refuse to share it. You just keep accumulating, keep controlling, keep holding everything so tight that nobody else can breathe. Well, it's our turn now. Mine and Vanessa's. We've earned it. I looked at my son. You earn what you work for. You haven't worked for any of this. He stood up from the table. Enjoy your last free day, Dad. He walked out. I sat there alone and looked at my untouched steak. Then I called Marcus. It's happening tomorrow. 2 o'clock. I know, he said. I've already been in contact with law enforcement. We'll be ready. I drove back to Curtis's house and did not sleep that night. I lay in the guest bed in the dark and stared at the ceiling and thought about the whole long chain of it got 31 years of building. 29 years in that house. 5 years of grief since Gloria passed. And now all of it had come down to a courtroom on a Thursday afternoon dot at 1:15 the next day. I arrived at the Fulton County Courthouse on Pryor Street downtown. Marcus was waiting at the entrance with 2 federal investigators in plain clothes, quiet men in dark suits who had reviewed the video the night before. You ready? Marcus asked. Ready as I'll ever be. We went inside. The courtroom was on the 4th floor. Through the small rectangular window in the door, I could see Darius and Vanessa seated at the front. The tall lawyer was with them. Beside him sat a man in a gray suit, Dr. Caldwell, I assumed. He was turned slightly away from the others, like a man who had not fully committed to where he was sitting. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. "Wait here. Let them go first." I watched through the window as the hearing opened. Darius's attorney, a man with a practiced, unhurried voice, stood and addressed the judge. A 60-something woman with close-cropped silver hair and reading glasses she had not yet put on. "Your Honor, we are before this court today to petition for emergency guardianship over Mr. James Watkins. Mr. Watkins is 68 years of age and exhibiting clear signs of cognitive decline. We have submitted a medical assessment from Dr. Caldwell confirming early-stage dementia. Given his demonstrated inability to manage his own financial and personal affairs, we respectfully request that his son, Darius Watkins, be appointed as legal guardian with full power of attorney over all assets." The judge reviewed the documents in front of her. Her expression did not change. "These are serious allegations. Is Mr. Watkins present?" "No, Your Honor, given concerns about his mental state and the potential for agitation. He was not notified of this proceeding." That was my cue. Marcus pushed the courtroom doors open. I walked in behind him, followed by the two investigators. "Your Honor," Marcus announced, and his voice filled the room. "I am Marcus Webb, counsel for Mr. James Watkins. Mr. Watkins is present, fully competent, and fully aware of everything that is being alleged in this courtroom today." Darius turned in his seat. The color left his face. Vanessa's eyes went to the door first, quick, calculating, measuring the exit. When she saw the investigators behind me, something shifted in her posture. Not panic. Not yet. Just a woman rapidly reassessing what her options were. That composure, even in that moment, told me everything about how long she had been running this operation. "I am here to defend myself," I said, and walked to the front of the room. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Watkins, are you represented by counsel?" "I am, Your Honor. Mr. Webb has represented me for 20 years. Marcus approached the bench and placed a thick folder in front of the judge. "Your Honor, I am submitting evidence that this petition is built entirely on fraud. The medical assessment from Dr. Caldwell was fabricated. Mr. Watkins has never been examined by this physician, not once, not for any reason. Furthermore, I am submitting video evidence of the petitioners conspiring to misappropriate Mr. Watkins' assets through forged transfer documents and a falsified dementia diagnosis." The judge examined the materials. Her expression hardened in a way that was quiet and absolute. "We also have an audio recording of the petitioner, Darius Watkins, explicitly describing this conspiracy to his father during a conversation at a downtown restaurant yesterday evening." Darius stood up. "This is a mischaracterization. He's confused. He doesn't understand what. Sit down, Mr. Watkins." He sat. The judge turned to the man in the gray suit. "Dr. Caldwell, did you personally and physically examine Mr. James Watkins?" Dr. Caldwell shifted in his seat like a man who had just realized the ground beneath him was not solid. "I reviewed his medical records. I made a professional assessment based on available documentation. And did you examine him in person?" A long pause. "Not in person, no, but given the parameters of—" "That is perjury, Dr. Caldwell." She set her glasses down. "You submitted a medical assessment to this court, certifying a diagnosis of dementia in a patient you have never met." She turned to the attorney. "And you, if you knowingly filed a falsified medical report with this court, you are facing criminal charges and disbarment proceedings. Both." The attorney started to rise. "Your Honor, I was not fully aware of the nature of—" "Save that for your own hearing." She looked to the investigators. "Officers, I am requesting the immediate arrest of these individuals." The charges as I see them are fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and perjury. We will sort out the full list downstairs." One of the investigators stepped forward. Darius's eyes went wide. Vanessa stood and turned toward the side door with the quick, purposeful movement of someone who has already thought through the nearest exit. But the second investigator was already there. "Darius Watkins. Vanessa Watkins. You are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to retain and instruct counsel without delay." I watched them put handcuffs on my son. He was pale, shaking. He looked at me across that courtroom with something on his face that I hadn't seen from him in 20 years. The look of a boy who knows he has done something that cannot be done. Dad, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Please. I looked at him for a long moment. This man who had been my little boy, who had held his mother's hand in that hospital room and wept when she was gone, who had stood at her grave and told me we would get through it together. "You made your choice, Darius. Now you have to live with it." They led him out. Vanessa walked behind him, and I noticed that even in handcuffs, even with investigators on either side, she held herself upright. There was no crying, no begging, just a woman who had run her plan all the way to its end and was now doing the accounting. That steadiness told me what I already knew. She had known the risks and accepted them. Whatever came next, she had decided it on her own terms. The lawyer followed behind. Already on his phone, Dr. Caldwell was escorted out last, looking like a man who had just understood too late exactly what he had agreed to. When the doors closed, the courtroom was absolutely still. The judge looked at me over her reading glasses. "Mr. Watkins, I am deeply sorry that you were subjected to this. The petition is denied in its entirety. Your assets and your legal autonomy are fully and completely protected. Thank you, Your Honor." I walked out of that courthouse with Marcus beside me. The June heat hit me at the doors. Atlanta summer, heavy and honest. The kind of air that doesn't pretend to be anything other than what it is. The city spread out in front of me. "How are you holding up?" Marcus asked. I didn't answer for a moment. Relieved, sad, empty, angry, proud, broken. All of it braided together into something I didn't have a name for. "I just sent my son to prison." I said. "He sent himself," Marcus said. "You just made sure he couldn't get away with it." 4 months later, the trial concluded. Darius received 5 years for fraud and conspiracy. Vanessa received 4 years, a lighter sentence than Darius's, though she had orchestrated more of it, because the prosecution could demonstrate less direct financial involvement on paper. She had been careful about that too. Even in the planning, she had kept herself one careful step back from anything that looked like her name on a document. That precision, even in the commission of the crime, was something I found myself almost unable not to respect. Gloria would have recognized it immediately for what it was, the specific intelligence of a woman who knew that the world rarely gave her credit, and so she learned to work in ways that couldn't be easily attributed. That doesn't make it right, not by any measure. But it is true. Dr. Caldwell lost his medical license and received 3 years. The attorney was disbarred and sentenced to 18 months. I watched them all be led away from the sentencing. I felt no satisfaction, just a deep, hollow grief that seemed to have no floor dot. I moved back into my house. I reorganized the filing cabinet the way Gloria taught me, key pointing straight up. I kept the camera in the clock. Old habits. Curtis comes over for dinner most evenings. We eat together and watch the Hawks, and don't talk about what happened unless I bring it up. He understands grief. He spent 30 years watching people lose everything in a matter of minutes. He knows you don't push a man toward something. He's not ready to say out loud. Deshaun at the yard has taken on more responsibility. He runs day-to-day operations while I work fewer hours. I started volunteering with Rebuilding Together Atlanta, helping renovate homes for elderly residents who can't afford the work themselves. It feels right, using what I know how to build for people who need it. 8 months after the sentencing, a letter arrived from the correctional facility. I held it in my hands for 3 days before I opened it. Dad, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness, but I have to write it. I spent my whole life believing you owed me something. That because you worked so much, because you missed things, because you weren't always there, you owed me compensation. I told myself that taking from you wasn't really stealing. It was just collecting what was already mine. I was wrong. You built everything with your hands. You started with nothing. You worked so that I could have a life you never had. Vanessa told me we deserved your money. She told me you were too old to appreciate what you had, that we would use it better. And I chose to believe her because it was easier than being grateful. I think about Mom, about what she would say if she could see what I became. She would be ashamed of me. I am ashamed of myself. I'm not writing to ask you to help me get out. I'm not asking for money or visits or forgiveness. I'm writing because I need you to know that I finally understand the thing you tried to teach me my whole life. You taught me that actions have consequences. It took losing everything to learn it. Take care of yourself. Deadliest. I read it twice. Then I folded it and placed it in my desk drawer, next to the photographs of Gloria. I did not write back. Not yet. Maybe someday. 2 years have passed. Watkins Supply is still running. I promoted Deshaun to partner. Curtis and I still have dinner together most nights. His wife Patricia makes sweet potato pie that tastes the way Gloria's kitchen used to smell on Sunday afternoons. I sold the Savannah condo. Too many memories of family vacations with a version of my son that doesn't exist anymore. But I kept the cabin up in Blue Ridge. I drive up there on weekends sometimes and sit on the porch and watch the evening settle over the mountains. The light going pink and then dark over the ridgeline. And I kept the house. The one I built with my own hands. The one where Gloria and I raised our son and filled the rooms with 33 years of a real life. The one where I learned the hardest lesson a man can learn. Some evenings I sit in my office and look at the photographs. Darius at 6 years old at Lake Lanier, squinting into the sun. Darius at his first job. Darius at his wedding, smiling beside a woman I should have looked at more carefully. Or maybe I should have listened more carefully to the woman who was already looking. I don't have all the answers. Maybe no one does, but here is what I know. I did the right thing. The hard thing. The thing that cost me my only child. And I would do it again, because a man who will not protect what he has built is not a man. He is an opportunity. I learned that trust is not inherited. It is built slowly through consistency and sacrifice. That family is not just blood. It is showing up when things are hard, telling the truth when a lie would be easier, choosing someone's real interest over your own comfort. I learned to listen to the women who see clearly. Gloria saw things I missed. Patricia sees things Curtis misses. The women around us spend their whole lives reading rooms, reading people, reading situations, and too often we hear them, but we don't really listen. That is a failure I carry. The summer heat is pressing against the windows tonight. Atlanta in July, warm and heavy and alive. Promising something even when you're not sure what. Sit in my chair and I listen to the city and I think about Gloria, about what she would say if she were here. She would say, "You did the right thing." Jimmy, she would say, "Keep living. Keep building. Don't let this be the last chapter." She would say, "Love doesn't mean letting people take you apart." And she would be right. She was always right, Dot. Thank you for being here and letting me share my story. If it touched you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me what city and state you're watching from. I love knowing where you all are. If you want to support me even more, there's a donation link in the description.